welcome back for another episode of Last to Know. This is my video series focusing on those final issues in a run, those last issues for end of miniseries, end of ongoing. Sometimes it's planned, sometimes it's surprise, but all in all, these are some final issues in runs that are worth more than you might expect. Hopefully you're enjoying this series as well as everything else here on the channel. Please let me know what you think in the comments down below. Make sure that you like, you subscribe, you hit the alert button so you don't miss anything. Keep telling your friends so we can keep growing the channel. And if you want to see this week's selection of books, just hang out for a few seconds after the intro, and I will be right back. All right, so to start us off, let's see what I have for you this week. I think I'm actually focusing in a lot on DC books this week, just by happenstance, the way that I group them. As you'll see, I do a couple of different chunks, kind of focus in on a couple of different options. So with that, let's see what I got in store for you this week. Starting off again with DC, but on the animated side of things. So with the animated shows, there were some comics that adapted the animated series, and some of those are highly collectible. And again, worth a little bit more than you might expect. Starting off with Justice League Unlimited number 46. Yes, Justice League and Justice League Unlimited were two of the best animated series DC has produced, in my opinion. A lot of fun to watch those shows. You got that Bruce Timm style, following up on Batman the Animated Series, and Superman as well. But here we have the entire Justice League Unlimited, expanding its scope to a lot of lesser-known characters, characters that didn't get a lot of time in the spotlight. And here we have a comic book also adapted from that series. Now, you're not going to get rich if you find this one. Right now, average sales in this thing are only like $5 to $10, but those were low-grade sales. These were not 9.8 near mint copies that actually sold. These were some books that are usually found in the kids section that could be a little banged up, a little bent up, and heavily spine-ticked. So even with that, in lower grade, $5 to $10 is still something. So if you find this for $1, it could be worth your effort. Now, listings, kind of in that same kind of range right now, 10 to 18 bucks. By and large, that's the main price, but high offer, $28. So the highest listing out there is 28 bucks raw right now, just to give you an example, because I'm going to give you an average to kind of broadly and give you a scope of what we're looking at here, but there's always going to be outliers on both sides, some cheaper options and some even much more expensive options. But I'm going to spotlight that high ask as well, so you can see the upwards level that you could potentially seek if you find this book at your shop for cheap, because that's the point. I'm trying to give you books that you can dig and find in those dollar boxes, those cheap boxes, when you're out there hunting things, again, that are worth a few bucks more than you might expect. With that, if you are seeking high-grade copies and you have a chance to get yourself a 9.8, well, you can join a very exclusive club, as there is only one 9.8 currently of this particular Justice League Unlimited book, that final issue number 46 from 2008. So you can be very exclusive if you can find a 9.8 and probably get a hefty premium if you were to actually sell it too. So something else to keep in mind. Now, sticking with the animated series over at DC, and I mentioned Superman as well, let's take a look at Superman Adventures, number 66, the final issue of that comic run. Average sales on this one are a little bit more, looking at more like 15 to 20 bucks by and large for, raw copies, mid-grade to higher grade. Average listings right now, though, are looking for 50 bucks. There were a couple listings I saw, all looking for 50 bucks, and there was a high listing actually out there of $69. So despite the fact that the sales might be in the $10 to $20 or $15 to $20 range, asking prices right now are much higher. So you have a higher upside if you can find one of these cheap at a shop or place near you. Again, it might not be a comic shop. You might find it at a bookstore or a yard sale or a flea market. Half-price books, wherever you find your stuff, this is some fun books to keep an eye out for. And much like the Justice League Unlimited, there is a very exclusive 9.8 listing here with only 3. So only 3 9.8s currently. If you could find the 4th, again, very exclusive company, and you could probably get yourself a hefty premium with it. With that said, well, you're also going to find the right buyer, because not everybody wants to get 9.8 in some of these books. Some of these things are a little niche that you got to find that special buyer and be patient. With that said, we're going to go over to DC, to Batman now. Not the first Batman animated series, but Gotham Adventures. So there were multiple runs of comics, especially adapting Batman cartoons, because there have been a lot of different Batman cartoons over the years. But comic runs, Batman Gotham Adventures ended with issue 60. And this particular issue also does all right. 8 to 16 bucks have been average sales recently. That's in the last 3 months, just to give you a sense of how far back I'm looking. Sometimes I got to reach back a little bit further, maybe to 6 months. If there haven't been any sales, then I'll try to get you a range. But by and large, last 3 months, 8 to 16 bucks is what this thing is selling for, while listings are looking for more like 10 to 30, with that high mark being 45 bucks on this final issue. And again, black cover, you're going to get all the talk of it. Black cover is hard to find a 9.8, which is probably true, but it's going to be true of any kids book like this, because this is, again, a comic targeted at kids, fans of the animated show, which was there in place to sell toys and, again, attract children to watch. With that said, this one also has a very small 9.8 list with only 5, more than the rest, but it is Batman. So Batman's going to have a little bit more, I guess, graded, because I think he has more fans as far as the animated series goes, because he's been around longer. He kind of started it for DC. So it makes more sense that there's a few more of Gotham Adventures in that grade in 9.8 than the other books. With that said, we got one more animated series to go over, and it is another Batman series, but a different take. Came a little bit later in time. The Batman Strikes kind of updated the look, got away from the Bruce Timm stylings and tried to come up with something new and something different, revamping some of the looks of some of the characters. The Batman Strikes is a series that did run for 50 issues. So the final issue 50 ended in 2008. This thing sells pretty well, with average sales being about $39. So almost 40 bucks for this final issue isn't too bad. While listings, well, not many out there. In fact, 15 bucks it's only listed for, but low grade. Not nice copies. Just to be fair, I looked at what was out there, and that's all that's out there is like 15 bucks in a lower grade. So again, not an easy book to track down, but that's what's out there right now. So the price may seem low, but that's for lower grade. So that's also context for you to keep in place. And as far as the 9.8 goes, we got none. Nobody has graded or found a 9.8 of this particular book as of yet. So if you find a nice clean copy, you could be the first. You could set the market, and you can be an exclusive company of one of one. Who knows? With that said, that's the first chunk of books I wanted to talk about. But before we move on to the next group, I want to talk about BCW. Use my code RENA10 over there to save yourself 10% off your entire order. That's 10% off your bags, your boards, your long boxes, your short boxes, your CGC boxes, top loaders, pages for your cards, top loaders for your cards. Basically anything to keep your comics or collectibles safe. You can order it over at BCW and save 10% off with my code RENA10. You help out the channel, you get yourself a discount, really nothing to lose. Now, with that said, let's stick with DC a little bit longer and take a look at another chunk of books here that are not animated series, but JSA. I know, Darwin Cook, it does have a little bit of that Bruce Timm flavor, but this is a classic Darwin Cook cover, to me, at least. Issue 54 of Justice Society of America. Good read. I enjoyed reading the JSA series. There have been a couple over the years. Also, not going to get you rich, but average sales, $7. $7 seems really low, right? However, let's compare that to the average listing. So while that's what's sold, this is not a book that's heavily looked at right now. It's not like a hot book that a lot of folks are talking about. So that's also why you're going to see some potentially low sales, but higher asks. And that's what we have here, as listings are looking for $40 to $50 on this book. Granted, many are incorrectly listing this as a 1 in 10 because there were some 1 in 10s near the end of the run in the Justice Society of America comics. But this particular issue, 54, the final one, as far as I'm aware of, it's just one cover. Just one cover. So there's no 1 in 10s. It's just this. With that said, newsstands, however, can also fetch you a premium. And that's something else you want to keep in mind. As right now, the high listing is a newsstand that's looking for $60 right now for this book. You'll tell the difference because it doesn't say direct sales there. The barcode for this book, it's just a barcode on its own. And that would be the newsstand for this book, Justice Society number 54. So another fun book to look out for, and one that has a very low census with only 2 9.8s currently for it. So find high grade. You can join an exclusive club as well. Overall, over at DC, we're also going to look at Harley. So Harley Quinn, her first solo title ran for all of 38 issues and ended in 2004. Granted, she's had multiple series since then, but this was the OG, the original, ending at issue 38. And this book sells for about $24 to $30 still. Not too bad for this original run. with listings looking for that kind of a similar range, 22 to 28, with the high listing being $190 for a CGC 9.8. So that's the biggest listing right now, a 9.8, looking for almost 200 bucks. Pretty good upside on a book like this. If you can find a good copy for 20 to 30 bucks, get it up to 200, not bad. With that said, plenty graded though. Not a ton, but a decent amount with 38 copies for issue 38 currently. So if you were to get another copy graded, you're going to ruin that symmetry of 38 9.8s for issue 38 of Harley Quinn. But hey, what are you going to do? With that said, let's move on to a more expensive one, and another one you'll probably be interested in to look for. And this was one I've looked for a while, mostly because I'm a big fan of the cover, and that's Power Girl number 27. And I have found this. I have found this in my hunts and in my travels, and I believe I found it for $1 because I've been hunting for dollar books for ages now. And with that said, Power Girl 27 currently sells for about 70 to 100 bucks. That's right, 70 to 100 bucks with low-grade copies. Low-grade copies even getting 50 bucks. So you can get 50 bucks even for a well-worn issue for this particular book because it is quite tough and the cover is popular. Listings, kind of in the same range, 100 to 110, so pretty consistent, looking for about 100 bucks for a raw copy of this. Meanwhile, a 9.8, that's the high listing, looking for $355. So big numbers on Power Girl number 27, and again, it's a fun cover. It's a good cover. One that's pretty popular because there are a lot of 9.8s, as there are currently 240 9.8s of this book right now, and yet it still fetches prices like that. So once again, something to keep in mind, as it is kind of a popular book for being a final issue. Now, what might not be as popular with most of our crowd here, guys, you might know a Gooner cover like this, and it's a popular one people have talked about. But let's look at a book that may not be as heavily talked about, but has some pretty interesting prices. And that is the final issue of Sergeant Rock. Yes, issue 422 of Sergeant Rock, the Kubert triple threat. You got Joe, Andy, and Adam working together for the first time here on this issue 422. And this book sells for anywhere from 20 to 90 bucks recently. 20 to 90 bucks, not too bad, pretty wide range. But that's for all grades, all copies that I found. Again, not a lot of copies, just a handful, but still, 20 to 90 bucks was the range that I found for sales. Meanwhile, listings, well, listings can be anywhere from $50 to $300 raw. Yes, and there were multiple listings for $300, by the way. So 50 to 300 bucks for this book. I'm not saying they're going to fetch that price, but it's being asked for, including 500 bucks as the high price. That is a 9.6 Canadian price variant that's looking for $500 because, yeah, price variance is another little niche that people like to collect. So talk about newsstands, Canadian price, Australian price, etc. Those types of things can fetch you a premium because some folks like to collect that sort of thing. But Sergeant Rock, 422. Again, probably not a book a lot of you are aware of or new to even keep an eye out for. But it's one you probably should. And another one that has a very low census with only 5 9.8s for this particular book, issue 422. Now, with that said, I've got one more group of books to talk about, but before we get there, I want to remind you guys about Whatnot. And if you haven't tried it yet, first-time users, sign up using my link below and get yourselves a free $15 to spend on whatever you want with whomever you want. No strings attached. $15 to try out the app for free, just to sign up, and you can go buy something with that $15. You help out the channel, you get yourself free money. You really got nothing to lose again. So, with that said, let's go over to Milestone. Sticking at DC, but looking over at Milestone. I know you guys remember these books from the 90s. Yes, they brought them back recently, the Dakotaverse, but let's look at the original titles and those final issues of the original titles, starting off with Blood Syndicate. So, Blood Syndicate, the extra-sized final issue. Not all final issues say it on the cover, but this one does, as you can see right there. Extra-sized final issue from Milestone, issue 35 of Blood Syndicate. This one does okay. I'm starting off here to warm you guys up. This one, about 12 bucks is what you're going to get currently. In the last 3 months of sales, that's what they've been getting. But asking prices, well, more like $25 to $45 with a high ask looking for 55 bucks raw. So, not bad if you can find issue 35 of Blood Syndicate. And again, some of these are going to be tough because print runs kind of dwindled near the end, and that's why some of these titles got canceled. So they could be tough to find. Print runs were not that high. With that said, CGC census is also not that high with only 4 9.8s. So if you could find yourself some nice clean copy, you do well to try and get it graded because there are only 4 9.8s currently for that final issue of Blood Syndicate. Now, stick it in the Decoderverse over at Milestone. Let's now look at hardware. Got to go to that Milestone issue of 50. So issue 50, final issue. Once again, this one doesn't say that it's the final issue, but it is. It is the last issue of hardware, and this one could get you about 25 to 40 bucks with some recent sales. So 25 to 40, recent last 3 months of activity, but asking prices a bit higher, as the current listings are looking for $75 to $100. That's right, 75 to 100 bucks raw, while a 9.8 is the high listing right now, looking for 455 bucks. 455 for an issue 50 of hardware. Yeah, it's a pretty big number for a final issue, so something to keep in mind. And as is 75 to 100 raw. And again, not all of those are 9.8 candidates. Some of them might just be very fine. Just going to be pretty broad with the grades, just going with the broad prices. But you have to look and see what you can find. If you're looking online, you got to take a close look. If you're looking at, if it live, in hand, that's something different. But with that said, another Milestone book with very few in the census, with only 5 9.8s for this final issue 50. So low census numbers here across all of these books. So something else to consider if you find those copies in nice quality. With that said, 2 more books for you. We're going to shift now from hardware over to Icon. So Icon was more like the Superman of the Dakota universe. This one ended at, what was this, issue 42, I believe. Average sales going for a little bit more than hardware, about the same, 25 to 45 here, but listings are actually cheaper. Just one of those things. Current listings right now, while sales went 25 to 45, the current listings I could find were only 30 bucks, and I didn't find many, apart from a 9.6 that wanted 90 bucks. I don't know. Interesting, right? It's just one of those things where sales could sometimes have been higher than what the current listings are. It is what it is. But once again, not a lot in the census, with only 2. 2 in the census for this particular book, which will take us to our final Milestone book that I want to talk about today. And that is probably the most popular title of the group, Static. So Static ended at issue 45 back in the day. Again, the cover stands out. I know a lot of people have searched for this book because it is quite valuable. It is quite sought after. Because again, Static was the most popular character to come out of the Decoderverse there, and it reflects it in the price, with average sales still on this issue 45 at $155 to $210 raw. That's right, $155 to $210 raw for this particular book, issue 45 of Static. While listings, not too far off, $165 to $350. Again, broad strokes. Broad strokes numbers here, because there is a high listing raw seeking $650. I believe I also saw, I wanted to put that out there because that was for a raw copy. Because yes, I think there is a 9.8 out there that's looking for like $1,200, but that's a 9.8. This is a raw looking for $650. And with those 9.8s, this one isn't as low census as the rest, as this one, again, is a popular book. So there are actually 45 9.8s for issue 45 of Static. Again, nice little symmetry there. It's kind of like the Harley book. Coincidence, I guess. But again, hopefully you guys enjoyed this show and found some books that you should keep an eye out for. Maybe I gave you something new to hunt, something new to look for. That's kind of my goal here, to kind of spread some awareness on books that you might not be aware are worth more than they actually, more than you might think. So with that, until next time, that's all I got for you. Next time I'm going to try something else fun. I might do some next to last issues, because while the final issues are valuable, the next to last issues can also be a little bit more than you might expect. So that's my plan for this series. Next time out is do some next to last issues, and I figure I'll sprinkle a couple of those in here after a few regular issues. Then we can do a few next. Then we can do a next to last, just cherry picking some of the books that we've covered already. So with that all said, hopefully you enjoyed this series. Hopefully you enjoy everything else here on the channel. And I'll see you all soon with some more content. All right. Later.